Hospice Nurse Julie up next on the Paranormal Podcast. Welcome to the Paranormal Podcast. I am Jim Harold, and so glad to be with you once again. And today we are going to cover what I think the most important topic that we've covered in literally the thousands of episodes that we've done across the various shows. And that's the topic of death, because we might not all see a UFO. We might not all see a ghost. Most of us aren't going to see a Bigfoot. But all of us have to walk that lonesome valley. And we're going to talk to someone who has helped people walk that valley and helped in the area of death education. And I'm talking about Hospice Nurse Julie, and you see her right there. And you may very well know her. She is a super popular YouTuber. She is also a registered nurse, of course, and New York Times best-selling author. And she's dedicated to demystifying the end of life. She worked as an ICU nurse for 8 years before finding her calling in palliative care. Julie loves educating her audience on social media about how the body dies naturally, utilizing her medical training and personal experience to share insights on end-of-life phenomena. Her book, Nothing to Fear, Demystifying Death to Live More Fully, advocates for open discussions about death and works to alleviate its stigma. Of course, she also has this immensely popular YouTube channel. I mean, people love it, and they're great videos, very informative, very interesting. Julie, welcome to the show today. Thank you for joining us. I know you're super busy.
Thank you for having me. What an intro. Thank you so much. Yeah, it was so good. Like, I haven't heard it like that before. I like it.
Well, there you go. I'm glad you like it, and I like what you do as well. So let me ask you. Let's start from the beginning. Yeah. How in the world does one get to that place of being a hospice nurse? Because I can't imagine that it's an easy job. I don't know if you go to the guidance counselor and necessarily say, I want to be a hospice nurse, although bless hospice nurses. I'm sure there are people who do start out that way, but it seems like something you got to work your way up to. How did it happen for you?
I think there are some people who do set out to do that. I was not one of those people. I was young. It was my second degree when I got my nursing degree. I had my first degree in psychology. And when I first started out in nursing, I was like, I think what most nurses start out like. Really gung-ho, really like, I'm going to be in the emergency room. I'm going to work in the ICU. I'm going to save people. I wanted to be a flight nurse. And all of those things are wonderful when you're thinking, at least for me, when I'm thinking about it. And then when I actually did it, when I became an ICU nurse at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Maryland, it was a rude awakening for me. You know, I was grateful to be there. I loved learning. It took about 2 years of working as a ICU nurse to even feel comfortable being there. You know, like at first 6 months, I was dreaming about beeping and alarms and, you know, couldn't find this medication or get a hold of that doctor. So it was a lot. But being an ICU nurse, after I got comfortable, right, I started seeing how, of course, we're doing wonderful things. And it's a wonderful place that saves a lot of people. And the other side of it was this really huge missing link, missing gap of education about what was truly happening to some of our patients, which was some of our patients were being kept alive, I felt, to their detriment. Like, to me, I started seeing that there are worse things than death. And some of those things are laying in a hospital bed, being kept alive by multiple machines, not really having the family members truly understand what was happening with their loved one. And it was no one's fault. It was just sort of like everyone was either passing the buck or doing exactly what they had to do. You know, this doctor's focused on the kidneys. This doctor's focused on the lungs. Mm-hmm. And there was never like all of us coming together and saying, hey, what's really going on here? Is this person really going to ever leave the ICU? And if they do, then what? What's their life really going to look like? Are they going to have quality of life? So it took me many years to get there, but I started being the person who started speaking up in rounds. You know, let's have a family meeting. Let's talk about the big picture. And when I started to do that, I started to see that most families would say, no, we don't want them to be alive if this is what it is, and they're not going to get better. And although my patients were being taken off machines and dying by the end of my shift, which was horrifying initially, because it was kind of like, whoa, what did I do? I was the one who started this ball rolling. Is I started just seeing the empowerment of it as well. And even though it was sad and hard, I felt like we were doing the right thing. And through those experiences, it still took me another, I don't know, 6 years to leave the ICU. And I eventually thought, we're all going to die. And if that's the case, like, I want to do this a different way. And I just sort of took the plunge and I applied for a nursing job, hospice nursing job that said must have hospice nurse experience, which I didn't. And I went to the interview and just sort of said, listen, I don't know if I'm going to like this. I don't know if I'm going to be good at this, but here's my experience and I want to do it a different way. And I did it. And luckily it panned out. And now, although everyone thinks being a hospice nurse is a hard job, to me, it's the best job. I mean, I feel like I've found my calling. I love it.
So in your book, you talk about the gift of a peaceful death, the gift of a peaceful death. I think particularly in the Western world, U.S. specifically, I can speak to that because that's why I know, it's kind of viewed as a negative. Death, ooh, we don't want death. Death is horrible and things. But you kind of led into it before. What did you mean by the gift of a peaceful death?
What I want people to really feel in their hearts, not their head, but their heart, is that they're going to die. And that sounds horrific when I say it, but I think the more we truly understand that we really are going to die, and some of us are going to have the chance to know that we're going to. Because of this disease diagnosis, we know the trajectory of that disease, we know it's terminal. So we do have somewhat of an idea that we're going to die. Not everyone's going to get that, but some people are. And if you are one of those few people that get that, I feel like it's a gift. It can be a gift because you can plan. You can have people like a hospice nurse, hospice doctors to help educate you and help you understand what end of life looks like and how we can help that, how we can help you have something that can feel so scary and turn it into something a little more sacred, a little less scary. Peaceful, right? A peaceful death. And there's medical ways we can do that, right? Through medicine. And I think through a lot of like existential talking and understanding and learning, it can also help make things more peaceful.
I've actually heard and read of people who have been terminally diagnosed and they've said it's a gift. And it seems so counterintuitive to everything that we think of in our everyday, because everything we do, humans do, is geared towards survival, flight or flight or whatever it is. But you get my point. The point being that everything that we do is to survive, and we'll go to almost any lengths to survive. And you hear these very brave people saying, this is a gift. Do you find that people's thought process about, is there like a switch that gets flipped and their perspective changes when they're confronted with something like this?
I would say most people, not all, but most. And that's why there's such this misconception around death and dying and being a hospice nurse. If I go to a dinner party and someone says like, what do you do for work? Right? When I say hospice nursing, I mean, literally 10 out of 10 times people go, ugh, like they don't really want to hear about it, or like, oh, God bless you, or you're an angel. But clearly no more, they don't want to discuss it more, right? Because there's this misconception that death is always this horrible, awful, really sad thing. But the truth is, when you're around it all the time, like someone like me, it's not. It is not that. It can be that, and that's why I took to social media to try to educate about like how we can help people not have that experience. But most of the time, when I'm going into a home for the first time as a hospice nurse, and I'm telling people what to expect with their specific disease and their death, and I say the D word, death, dying, dead, people look relieved. The patient who is on hospice looks relieved. The family looks relieved. Finally, there's someone here who's willing to talk to us about the truth. And the truth is, I'm dying. And guess what? If you're around it all the time, like hospice nurses are, not just hospice nurses, chaplains, social worker, doctors, CNAs, there's a big team of us. We know we can help you understand what to expect. And that relief that people get is a gift to me, seeing it on their faces. It's a gift to them, it's a gift to their families. And there are difficult times in hospice. I don't want to totally sugarcoat it. We can get into that too. But generally speaking, it's beautiful.
And that's remarkable. But haven't we, don't you think as a society over the 20th and 21st century, we've kind of put dying in a box? I could tell you, I was probably, what is it? I was like 50 I was about 50 when I saw my first dead body that wasn't in a funeral home, through a tragic circumstance. But the point is that it's put into a box. I mean, people used to have the body laid out in their homes. It was sitting up with the dead and that kind of thing. And now it's at a funeral parlor and everything is very sanitized, and bless those workers as well. I don't think that they get enough credit for what they do in helping families deal with this process. But can you talk about that, our kind of propensity as a society to put death in a box?
Yes. Thank you for asking that question. It's something I think about all the time. Death isn't always an emergency. Yes, there are times when there's a car accident or something, like you said, something tragic happens. But sometimes death is not always an emergency. And, in the 1800s, people were dying in their homes all the time. That's where you went to die. You went home. Family was around. I just watched a movie, Hamnet, beautiful movie, P.S., where, so actually, spoiler alerts.
Spoiler alert, everybody. Close your ears. La, 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 la. Go ahead.
But people are dying in the home. And I remember watching the movie and going, yes, this is what it was. People were dying in the home. Children were seeing it. All ages were seeing this. They saw dead bodies. They cleaned the dead bodies. And I actually do think we should start shifting that way, because it would help us. I think it would help us tremendously in the grieving process as well, after your loved one dies, before your loved one dies, the anticipatory grief. And you don't understand what someone looks like when they're dying until you're the one taking care of your loved one. I've had so many people write into me and saying, I just didn't know. When we talked about the peaceful death before, most people have peaceful deaths home on hospice. Most people do. But if you don't know what dying looks like, you might not think they're dying peacefully. And that's another thing that I try to educate on. Like, what does death actually look like? Your loved one's not going to look the same. Even while they are dying, they are going to change. They're going to breathe different. They're going to look different. They're going to possibly smell different. And if you don't know that, you're going to equate that to suffering. So it's just, I just could talk about this forever. It's just important to stop pushing it away, right? Grandpa's dying in the back room. Don't let the children in. Don't let them see. And I think it needs to be opposite. We let them see, but also talk about what's happening, explain what's going on. I think the more secretive it is, the more scary it feels.
By the way, folks, if you're waiting for the supernatural stuff and the possible paranormal stuff, I'm definitely going to broach that. I'm going to get to that. But this is important ground we need to cover. This is important stuff we need to talk about. The dying themselves, what do they tell you as a nurse? Do they tell you about regrets? Do they tell you about things that they're happy about? Do they express what it feels like? What is that relationship like between you and the person who is in the hospice, the patient?
As a hospice nurse, there are times you can get close to people and they will talk to you about regrets or what they've learned through this process since they're not dead yet, right? That's the part about hospice, is that you're dying, but you're not dead yet. And you're purposely choosing this path to be at home with your family, and how are you going to utilize this time, right? So not every day is someone on hospice telling me all of their hopes and dreams and telling me their regrets. And many times, just FYI, the truth of the matter is people who aren't emotionally available in their everyday life while they're living don't suddenly become emotionally available just because they're dying. So don't feel bad if your loved one who is dying is not saying all of these profound things. That's one. But two, people who are willing to go there, and because I've done this long enough, there has been some who are willing to go there, mostly talk about, I wish I would have basically understood that I would die someday. Because the more you understand that you will die someday, the easier it is to put your values and what's most important to you up front, right? If it's being with your family, if it's traveling, if it's taking that time off work instead of working to do the things you wanted to do, that is mostly what people say. I've had so many people say, I worked my life away at a job I didn't like, hoping and planning and dreaming of retirement. And then I do all the things I wanted to do. And guess what? They retire and they get diagnosed with something terminal and they die. So many people are like that. And I know it's a privilege to say, just don't work so much. Not everyone can do that.
Right. Right.
But if you have PTO, right, paid time off, if you can take that one day before the weekend, right? I think there are ways you could potentially finagle, right, your life, your schedule to still not live with regrets, right? To start now understanding that you will die someday. And because of that, how do you want to live now, here, now? That is the message that I've gotten from my hospice patients in general. And that's really has changed how I live. Truly, it really does. I don't take my life for granted, all because of the hospice patients I have worked with.
Something I've heard said, and I think it's one of the most wise statements, and I lose track of it, and I think most of us, or many of us, lose track of it. We're all terminal.
Yeah.
It might be 10, it might be 20, it might be 30, it might be, if you're way younger than me, it might be 40, 50, 60 years. But we're all terminal. It's just a question of how long do we have. We're all terminal.
Yeah. Yep. And that's why my book, people always say, who's your book for? It's for everyone. It's for everyone. Because like you said, we're all terminal. And I don't say that I want that to not scare you, but uplift you. I truly do, like how you said it wasn't lost on you. I truly feel like I have went from like, here, I'm going to die, to here, I'm going to die. And what I mean by that is that like I can feel it in my soul, and in a good way, because it helps me appreciate the little things, the taste of my coffee, the sunlight on my face, getting to see the ocean, talking to my mom, understanding that I won't always be able to talk to my mom. Those things, they don't ruin my day. They actually help me feel more alive, more present.
Before we get to the spooky stuff, I want to ask you, how did you go from being Julie McFadden, RN, to being Hospice Nurse Julie? How and why did you start this? I mean, you've got the YouTube channel here. We see it, hundreds of thousands of subscribers, tens of millions of views. Obviously, you have the New York Times bestselling book, and we can talk about the journal you have behind you as well. But you had to make a decision to do this. These kind of things just don't happen. So how did it happen for you, and why, and how did you make that decision?
It does actually feel like it just happened. But this has been a wild ride that it has blown my own mind. I knew that I loved hospice nursing. I loved it. I liked going to work. I feel like I had a simple life of like, I go to work, I come home, I have my friends, I had a good work-life balance. Like I loved it, and I still do love it. And I had two close friends their parents were dying on hospice. So they were calling me, and I was like just sort of rattling off all the things that I would rattle off every day at my job. but they had known me for years. And they were like, how have I known you for years? And I didn't know that you knew all this stuff. This is crazy. You need to tell people this stuff. You need to start a podcast, do something where you're telling the general public all the things you know. And I was like almost 40 years old at the time. And I was kind of like, well, I guess I could maybe do a podcast. I don't know. And as you know, it's actually harder than I thought. And there was a lot of editing. And I just was like, I'm never going to do this. Like, I know my personality, it's not going to happen. I'm going to be awful at this. So at the time I went home to see my nieces. The world was kind of just opening up. It was still COVID times, but it was like somewhat opening up. And I traveled to see my family because I hadn't seen them in a very long time. And my nieces were of TikTok age. Okay. They were like tweens. And they got me on TikTok to watch their silly little videos that I was kind of teasing them for. Right. But then I started seeing people my age on TikTok educating about like space and gardening and cooking. And I thought, I'm going to make videos about death and dying. And I made 5 videos that the only 5 topics that I really knew I wanted to talk about. And the 4th one went viral. And I had like 10,000 followers overnight, 100,000 in a month, 1 million in a year. So TikTok is where I originally started. And then the other platforms just also caught on. Like I was just posting randomly, not really paying attention on the other platforms. And here we are. Like truly, that's like how it happened. The book came about because an article in Newsweek went viral. Someone reached out to me about writing a book. I said, I've never written a book before, but okay, I'll try it. Right. So it's all been just like little by little. And now my YouTube channel, I love my YouTube channel so much because it's a chance for me to really connect to people, longer form videos. It's easier to search things, right? Versus these little snippets. So it's been a wild ride. And I'm just sort of, each year I'm sort of like just taking it as it comes and doing things like this. I'm just so grateful. And I still nurse because I love it. I love being a nurse. And that's where I get my ultimate fulfillment, I think.
Oh, I think it's important. It's an important message that you're getting out there by all means. So congratulations on all the success. And I just see it growing more and more and more as time goes on. So let's talk a little bit about the paranormal stuff, because I'm definitely one of those people who believes that it's not game over. When your physical body dies, I believe that we go on. Now, exactly what happens? I don't really think anybody knows, because I know we've had people have near-death experiences and they come back, and I respect their experiences and I believe they're being truthful, and I believe that they're getting a glimpse of some of the things that we could potentially see. But nobody really knows, because nobody's been dead for, 6 months and come back and said, well, let me give you my report. So I guess I would ask you this, because it'd be interesting to have a baseline. When it comes to the afterlife, if you don't mind answering this, before you became a hospice nurse, what was your personal thoughts on the question of the afterlife? Were you somebody who said, yeah, I think we go on? Or were you somebody that said, hey, when you take the big dirt nap, it's over, you're dead, it's done, nice seeing you, game over, can't play again? Where did you fall in that continuum?
I always have believed in something greater than myself, and I never thought that when we died, it was over. But I am like you as well, where it's like, but I know I don't really know, what I have had prior to being a hospice nurse. I feel like I've had just feelings, different things that have happened to me where I felt connected to something bigger than me, which made me feel like almost like homesick for that thing. And it felt like a thing and a place, like almost like, oh, this isn't really my home. Like whatever that feeling is that feels so good and warm and peaceful and loving. I feel like that's what I miss. I miss that thing, that place. So even as a little girl, I feel like I thought those things and felt those things. And of course, we can get into it as time went on. As a hospice nurse, I definitely have kind of been like witness to some of that stuff, which just solidified what I believe. But I also like to toe that line of like, I don't know though. I really don't know. I'd like to toe that line. I think it's important. I don't want to be someone who's like trying to shove something down someone's throat. A belief is a belief. Um, that's what I believe, and I want you and other people to figure out what they believe.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So I was looking at some of your videos, and you talk about there's different things that happen. I mean, in kind of the more paranormal world, we talk about deathbed apparitions. We talk about shared death experiences. For example, when somebody's there, or there's even shared death experiences where you'll have, sisters, and they'll be half a world apart, and one will see the other at the time of death, like at their location. So there's some wild stuff that happens. But you talked about something that you've seen that's very interesting called visioning. What is visioning?
Visioning is one of the first things I wanted to talk about when I started the Hospice Nurse Julie channel, because when I first started hospice nursing, I came from an ICU background, very medical, like medically based, right? Scientifically based. And I remember passing out some information to my patients whenever I would go do a start of care, which means like where you're admitting someone onto hospice. And in our literature that we were giving to our patients were like signs and symptoms that someone was dying. And one of them was basically seeing dead people. They wrote that, like seeing dead relatives, dead loved ones, old pets that might have died. This is something to be expected. And I remember being embarrassed, like, what kind of company am I working for? Like, who says this kind of stuff? This can't be, even if they think it's real, like, how could they give it to someone as like an education piece? And I was kind of taken aback and a little turned off, like, what am I here? What is this? Until I started I started seeing it with my own eyes and seeing how important it was that families knew their loved one who's dying might start seeing, people who have already died. It's very normal. And the reason why we educate about it is not to say, and that means it's real, and that means that there's an afterlife and this, but it's more like, don't be surprised if it does, because this is one of the signs and symptoms of someone dying. And as a hospice nurse, if I hear my patients saying, I saw my dad yesterday at the bedside, I was really comforted by it. He told me that they're coming to get me soon, but not yet. I don't know what to make of this. I know that this person likely will die in the next 3 weeks, because deathbed visions don't usually happen right at death. They happen usually a few weeks before death. And it's usually the same thing. So it's either someone they know and love, their dad, their grandpa, or like a best friend, an old neighbor. People see their pets that have died. And it's always a comforting message. If it's not comforting and they're agitated and confused, it's something else. Visioning is very clear. And the person who's visioning is very clear. And they're usually not, they're usually not confused. They're not like in and out of consciousness. It's a very clear thing that I've never witnessed any other place except for on hospice.
And I think it's interesting you make the point that these people are not delusional, because I think that the kind of default thought is, oh, they're hallucinating. Of course, they're seeing things because they're on drugs, or, it's just, lack of oxygen to the brain or whatever it might be. But it's your perspective. These people are not hallucinating in your mind.
Oh, no. I mean, again, as an ICU nurse, I know what someone who is hypoxic, which means no oxygen to the brain or less oxygen to the brain.
Right.
I know what they act like. I know what they look like. I know what they say, right? I know what delirium looks like. I know what ICU psychosis looks like. I know what terminal agitation looks like. We don't know what visioning is or why it's happening, but we do know why. Like we know that it's not happening, right? Because of lack of oxygen, because of medications, because they're overly medicated or they have delirium, because those things are really specific too and really easy to see. And the difference between those things and visioning, it's like comparing apples to oranges. When someone's visioning, it's very clear. It's very clear. It's different than someone being delirious and saying something that doesn't totally make sense. It's very different.
And I I'm not going to say that you could say this, but I'd say I think they're actually seeing their loved ones who are preparing them for the journey. But again, I'm a woo-woo guy that hosts paranormal podcasts. So what can I
I hope
say?
so. I
What
mean,
can I
if
say?
I'm gonna if I'm gonna believe one of the things, it's like, why not believe in the thing that makes you feel comforted? You
Right,
know?
right.
All I know is that, like, people who are dying, when they see their dead loved ones, they are comforted. And what even if it is our brain, what an amazing brain to do that
True.
for us,
No, that's true.
right?
That's true.
Yeah.
One story, because we have a show called Campfire that we've been doing for quite a few years, probably my most popular show, and people come on and share their own stories. And there was this one story about this family member, their grandpa was in the hospital. And, he had had health issues here and there, but it was like, oh, grandpa's in the hospital again. No big deal. And he had told them that this young woman came to visit him, but they had no record of any woman coming to visit him or anything. Like a day or two later, gone. Wow. And and they established there wasn't anybody at the hospital or anything like that. So maybe it was an angel. Have you ever had anybody talk about angels of any sort that have visited them?
Yeah, many people have had, usually depends on like if they do follow a certain religion. Most people who follow certain religions that deal with angels will start saying they see Archangel Michael, or I just see angels, or do you hear that sound, right? And of course we don't hear the sound, but it's usually a beautiful music. So it depends on the person, but people have definitely said they've seen angels and experienced angels. And I don't know if you want to go here, but I feel like I've seen an angel.
Absolutely. I wouldn't be doing my job if, oh no, Julie, we'll do that another time. Now, of course I want to hear. Come on, tell us, give us the scoopage.
I know. I mean, it took me years before I was able to share this story, especially online, because I am someone who's into this stuff, but not enough to be like sharing it with the world, because I like to educate about death and dying on a scientific level. So then to share the other side of things always makes me a little nervous. But I had a woman, it is a longer story. Bear with me, but I swear.
No, take your time. Take your time. I've got as much time as you need.
I had a woman coming onto service who was actively dying, which meant she was very close to death, very, very end stages. So when I came to her home to do the admission, she was already, like, I thought, hours away from death. She was fully unconscious. She had changes in breathing, changes in skin color. She was cyanotic, which means basically blue. Brain definitely not oxygenating. She looked very peaceful, but I say all this to say, she was dying, period. Like, I have been a nurse for a very long time. I know what it looks like. She was very close to death. She was younger. She had kids in their early 20s. I was trying to educate them about helping them understand their mom was going to die and was going to die very soon. And she was very comfortable. So, there's nothing they have to do, but I wanted them to understand that their mom was going to die and she'd likely die that night. Oh. So before I left, and I never really do this, so again, I don't know why I did this time, I went into her room just to double check that she was comfortable. And she looked very comfortable, fully unconscious. And I put my hands on her bed and closed my eyes. And I don't even remember what I said. I wouldn't say a prayer, because that's not something I would do. I wouldn't go into a room and pray. So I don't know what I was doing, but I closed my eyes. And I remember thinking of her and sort of just being like, I wish you the best. Like, I felt like sad for them because she was young and she was dying so quickly. And I just wanted to make sure she was going to be okay. So I said something like that with my eyes closed. And all of a sudden I had this very clear vision of something, which I will get to in a second. And I just sort of pushed it out of my head, like that was weird. And I left. Okay. And didn't think anything of it after that. And then the next morning, when I didn't see any death email, so usually when someone dies overnight, there will be an email saying this on-call nurse went out to see this person. She died at X time, da 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 da. I didn't see that. And I thought, there's literally no way this woman has lived through the night. So something happened. So I call the home and the son answers real chipper. And I'm thinking weird. Okay. Son answers really chipper. Oh, hey, yeah. Yeah, mom slept through the night and now she's up eating pancakes. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, mom's up eating pancakes. She said she was hungry. I can hear her and her daughter like laughing in the background. So that's the first thing right there that I'm like shook to my core. This
Wow.
woman, there's
Yep.
literally no way this woman can be up at all, let alone eating pancakes and laughing.
But isn't that a
okay?
thing? Isn't rallying a thing? Don't they rally shortly before they die?
Yes. So I was thinking, I must be seeing the most miraculous rally of my life. That's what I thought. And then I was thinking, oh, great. Now I have to be the bearer of bad news again to this poor family that she's likely going to die soon. Again, right? Now, granted, this would have been a very, very, very extreme rally. I've never seen someone as close to death as she was. I've never seen someone come back from that. Literally, it's like scientifically impossible for her to be able to come back. Like she was basically brain dead the night before. So for her to come back is like, rallies aren't usually that significant. But I still was thinking that's the only thing that would explain this, right? So I go there, sure enough, she's up, she's walking, she's eating, like a true miracle. And I did break the bad news that this was likely the rally and she would likely die in a day or so. Go back to how she was, even in the next 12 hours possibly. And she didn't. She didn't. She lived like that for 3 more months, which doesn't sound like a long time to some people, but to be she was brain dead for sure. Of course, there were no EEGs on her brain to really know that, but you can look at someone and know if they're oxygenating, and she was not. And she lived well. She was up, walking, talking, do it for 3 months, before she died. Now, I say all this, so once that happened, once she did not have the rally, once she kept on living, it kept coming back to my brain what I saw that night when I put my hands on her bed. And what flashed into my mind, which I quickly put out of it, was a being, a really large being, like picture a car, but like upright, like huge being that basically kind of made me feel like I'm an angel, I'm her angel, and not like warm and fuzzy. It wasn't scary at all, but it was more like power. It was more like a force. Like even the thing I got in my head was kind of like a force.
Like a tough football coach with tough love.
Yes. Like not at all like, and now communicate with me. I'm warm and fuzzy. It was more just like, boom, I'm showing you that I'm here and that I'm taking care of this. And that's it, And I would have totally dismissed it, which I did. But after I saw that she was alive and well the next day and then lived another 3 months alive and well, I could not help but go back and go, maybe that wasn't in my head, right? Maybe I really was meant to see that. Because I knew what I saw, but I just quickly put it out of my head because like, I don't see angels. Like that's not like something that happens with me. But it was really hard to deny after I saw her alive and well the next day and then alive and well for the next 3 months. So yeah, I think I saw an angel. I mean, again, that's I don't really know, but that's what it felt like.
That's very cool. As we're winding down the interview here, I'll ask you about last words. I think about famous people who had famous last words. My favorite ones was Oscar Wilde, who said, either the wallpaper goes or I do. I think that was the best one I've heard.
That's so good.
But there's, have you heard that one before?
No,
there you can go. Hey, I told, I informed a hospice nurse of a famous last word she didn't know about. That's pretty cool. But also, Thomas Edison, it's very beautiful over there. Steve Jobs, oh, wow, oh, wow, oh, wow. And I don't think he was exactly, Mr. Religious.
Yes, that's a classic one. I love Steve Jobs. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Any last words that you've witnessed that gave you pause or really kind of struck you?
Most people dying don't know they will have last words. So very few people, at least while I'm sitting there, right? If I'm actually there witnessing someone's last breath, they usually have been unconscious for a few days. So this idea of like someone speaking right before they die, doesn't happen all the time. So it's like the loved ones that might catch like the last things they've said. But things that I really hold on to are like the last words that people say to their dying loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
And one that always sticks out to me that I did put in the book because it was so profound and it still makes me teary-eyed today is this family whose loved one went from not being actively dying. He was close. He was definitely close to death, but he wasn't unconscious or anything. But by the end of the visit, something had happened to him. Like death came quick, right? He
Right.
switched, and then he was actively dying. And I told the family that as I was there, and the way they reacted, the wife got in bed with him, the kids were by his side, the grandkids by his side, and I gave them time alone to be with their loved one dying and was charting in the kitchen, and I heard the wife say, see, it makes me cry every time I heard the wife say, "You were so easy to love. Thank you for loving
Oh,
me. You were so easy to love." So it wasn't him saying his last words, but it was like their last words to him.
wow.
And I just thought, that's so beautiful. You're so easy to love. So
Wow.
beautiful.
That's pretty awesome. I feel a little lump in the throat there. That's amazing.
I know. Yeah,
So,
that's why hospice nursing isn't hard, right? Like, even though it makes you sad, but it's still beautiful.
right. Well, life is holistic, right? It's not all good. It's not all bad. It's this continuum. It's a package deal, as they say, and death is certainly part of that package. And thank you for helping people deal with it, understand it better, and for doing what you do. So the vast majority of people who are either watching or listening to this will be familiar with your work. But if they're not, where can they find your YouTube channel, all your presences on social media, your book? I also saw in the background there you have a Nothing to Fear journal, which if you want to say a word or
Yes.
two about that, where can they find those things and anything else you'd like to add?
So wherever you like getting your information, if you like getting it online, I just go by Hospice Nurse Julie on all platforms. So I'm on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I have a website, hospicenursejulie.com. Like you said, my book, Nothing to Fear, which is a New York Times best-selling book, thanks to my followers. It's been so amazing. And then we came out with the workbook. So I'm a big journaler. I love to journal. So it is called the Nothing to Fear Journal because I am a journaler, but it's like a workbook. It kind of takes you through the book because there's a lot of educational pieces in the book. So it's kind of like well, now what? So we came out with the journal to go along with the book.
Well, excellent. It was a pleasure to meet you. I thank you for what you do, as do other thousands and actually millions of people. So thank you again, and thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for tuning in to the Paranormal Podcast. It has been great. What a great show. What a great person Julie is. I hope you check out everything she does. We'll talk to you next time. Have a great week, everybody. Stay safe and stay spooky.